Ah, once again, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. In St. Lucia and the diaspora, I'm so happy to be here with you. And it is special because I have brought back someone who was told to go back to Guyana and sort out their political perils. Well, he's back because he sorted it out, and Guyana is working fine. So he must have done a damn good job. And he has returned to his home in St. Lucia. It seems as though a lot of people don't realize it's his home. And not only that, here's a man who's been here for 40 years, has given us nearly all his life. His work has been here. So many youngsters, people who are now close to 50, was taught by him. He gave them that knowledge. Not only that, people forget that he was the deputy prime minister. I'm saying prime minister. He should be the deputy prime minister, but principal at the Castries Comprehensive School. And that's when the government realized this guy has so much to give. And today he has done so much for St. Lucia. And as you know, he's the director now of the National Trust. And he's been there for quite some time. And the National Trust, that was in peril to an extent, has done extremely well under his guidance. Let us be honest. So tonight, without further ado, I want to bring back Mr. Bishnu Tulsie on this program. Good evening, Bishnu.
Good evening, and thanks for having me again. It's a pleasure.
So, welcome to Head to Head. That's all I can say. Yeah. Hope your journey back was not horrendous at our borders, coming back into St. Lucia. And I'm saying that in all sincerity.
It was more of a mental journey.
Mental journey. I love this one. A mental journey. So, St. Lucia, there you are. Bishop, my first question to you deals with the National Trust Act. What are some of the areas it deals with that is now relevant with what is now taking place? The old prison demolition we saw, the saga of that. And now we are seeing Cabot because of the environs that is so important. And it does not seem as though those who are doing whatever they are doing have not read the National Trust Act, because the Act has everything in it. If you read it, reread it, and you will know that it is there to preserve this pristine land of ours. And not only that, people seem to forget we have prehistoric and historic, artifacts in this country. Explain that.
Yeah, I think the founders of the National Trust were very visionary. A number of esteemed St. Lucians got together, and this was all set up by the then Premier John Compton, to look at what is St. Lucian and ask them, how do we protect it? And so the trust was created out of that. Of course, I don't remember the exact language, but this is national law.
Yes, indeed.
This is a decision of the Parliament that this organization should be created. Importantly, by law, but a membership organization whose council will have a majority of members. So it was very deliberate that the trust should not be a politically controlled organization. That, like other boards where when government changes, the board changes. That doesn't happen. The fathers of the trust were very clear in their mind that the members of the trust must have the greatest voice in its governance. And I think that is significant. And in the Act, the organization was created to protect both our history and nature. So it speaks to architecture, it speaks to archaeology, it speaks to marine areas, submarine areas, flora and fauna, places of natural beauty. And it's so all-encompassing. The creation of museums is there as well. The creating of list of buildings to be protected. So the mandate is really wide. And with the resources we have, we've been trying to, since I came on board, and I looked at the program of that we were pursuing, I realized that there were areas that we were not dealing with. So we went to council and to the members and said, we really need to look back at our act and to make sure that we touch all of the areas. Was that a good thing? I don't know, because when you touch too many areas, you could do none of them well. So we have been following that plan for a while. And now with the new strategic plan, which has come into force from this year, we are zeroing in on some areas in which we did not do as much as we could have or should have. So we are now moving into a more focused area. And one of the underpinnings of all all elements of our mandate is education. So a lot of focus will be placed on education, information, dissemination, so that there could be a greater societal appreciation for our history and our culture and our natural spaces. And with that appreciation, we are hoping that people can then influence policy.
But here you are, you have the National Trust at Bishnu. And even at the beginning of it, and that's what I find strange, that those in power, should have been reading the act. It says quite clearly, listings of buildings, objects and monuments of prehistoric, historic, and archaeological interest, as you said, and places, listen to this one, places of natural beauty and their animal and plant life. So the National Trust is not just about buildings. It's about the whole.
Yeah, because, what is St. Lucia's heritage? I think I said it somewhere else. People talk about the beauty of St. Lucia. But St. Lucia is dressed in a green, is clothed in a green dress.
Correct.
Our landscapes. And that is the beauty. If you could imagine stripping all the forests, all the trees, no one would want to come here.
Exactly. Conservation is one of the most
exactly.
important things.
So it is, in terms of the act and areas of natural beauty, it is about ensuring that dress doesn't get torn.
Exactly.
And should it get torn, we need to patch it. We need to mend it.
Exactly.
And I think that we seem willing to give up a little bit at a time of a fixed land space. And if you keep doing that, you will wake up one day and you've given it all up.
All of it.
So yes. So the fathers of the trust ensured that not only are the historical and the artifacts and that are historic or prehistoric, but that also the landscapes and places of natural beauty fall under the mandate of the trust in terms of advocating for their protection.
But the area of the act that touched me, early hours of the morning, maybe 2 o'clock reading, is where it says to promote, and you just spoke about that, and preserve for the benefit and enjoyment of the state of submarine and subterranean areas of beauty, of natural or historic interest, and to preserve as far as possible their natural aspect, features, animals, again, plant life. All of this that we are speaking about, the recent, whatever we want to say, cobalt or whatever, is involved. All of that. Because even this particular book of mine shows you some cactuses that you find only on Donkey Beach.
Absolutely, in Cactus Valley, yeah.
Exactly.
It's-
There's 6 different cactuses. You can find about 3 or 4 of them you can find nowhere else.
Yeah.
Nowhere else.
And so, in terms of the cupboard development, with some imagination and discussion, could Cactus Valley have been left? You know, it's a large property.
Yes, yes.
Was it necessary?
Exactly.
You know, could it have been left there and become a feature of the overall development?
Yes, yes.
You know, but bulldoze,
Yes.
clear it.
Didn't
you know,
understand
no
the
appreciation.
importance of it.
Yeah, but also in what you read there about for the benefit of the state. The
Yes.
state is mentioned in more than one places in the act.
Yes, quite.
So
That's what I found.
the trust was created by the state
Yes.
to do things on behalf of the state
Yes. Yes.
and to act in an advisory capacity,
yes.
which means that there was an expectation when the trust was created that should something happen or be about to happen that impacts on any of those areas that are in the act, whether you're talking historic or natural, that the trust role was to be an advisor to the government. And I think that is the crux of the problem, that I don't think our policymakers understand the act or understand the reason why the trust was created.
Exactly.
You cannot advise if you're not engaged. And that engagement was broken, therefore the opportunity to advise was lost.
But here you have apart from, we talk about the beaches, there are other things. Because the other thing that I looked at when writing this book is looking at the Donkey Beach in that sense of the word with the cactus. But what I found even further interesting was that where it dealt with the turtles. We have 3 sets of turtles that pass in our waters. The green turtle, we have the leatherback, and we have the hawksbill. The leatherback goes to Donkey Beach to spawn. And that in itself, just like grand ants. And the trust is supposed to be, looking after those things. Because if not, grand ants would be destroyed.
Yeah, I mean, and especially the turtle.
Yes.
The turtle has come there. They are
Rare
under,
ones too.
yeah, they are under a lot of pressure, from illegal poaching and all of that.
Correct.
We don't have the resources to monitor all the beaches, but we have an office in the south, and we do a lot of monitoring and data collection and mapping of turtle activity along the southeast coast. We have people who go out and do this for us. So at least in that area, that part of the country, we are able to have an impact, on turtle life. But that kind of activity needs to be extended, throughout on all the beaches. But it's a question of resources, which at this time is difficult.
Yeah, because obviously it is very difficult because here at this present juncture you don't have that subvention, that could have made it. And we talk, and the thing that gets me, Bishnu, we talk about tourism. These are the things that's supposed to be attracting people. Our lizard, one of the rarest in the world. This is where, if you put a package together, these things become so important.
Yeah, it's ironic that we use certain features of the country
Yes.
to market it as a tourism destination.
Yes. Quite.
And in the process of developing the tourism product, we destroy those very things that we use to promote it. It just makes no sense. Surely there are ways in which you could balance conservation and development. And if Paris does not advertise its tourism product, its history,
Exactly.
and its culture, its cuisine. These are the things that sell it. So they don't need to have a massive advertising budget.
Italy is the same.
Italy is the same.
Yes.
Once you preserve those things that define you, people will come.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Because I went to Italy and I didn't know what to expect. And I must tell you that I felt I was in times past because these things were well preserved. And not only that, it encouraged me to go and do more research in that area.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah, absolutely.
And that for me is when people think about it, we talk about Caribs and Arawaks, but our artifacts, for example, tells us there was no such thing as Carib. They were Arawaks,
Yeah.
but they were probably the more violent so-called people.
I
who
think
they call the
that's not
Caribs.
really the case. But the other thing about tourism is that, and I'm talking about national policy now,
Yes, quite.
is that our tourism policy is focused on what we can do to develop tourism. And I think that's wrong.
Exactly.
I think tourism policy should be what can tourism do for our people. And once you ask the question that way, you begin to find different answers.
Yeah.
So tourism is not, has to be a means to an end, and the end cannot be tourism. The end has to be national development.
Well, I will hold us there, Bishnu, because I want to come back to the idea of this idea of national development, because we want to come into H, under the title H, where it says in the Act to pursue a policy of preservation and to act in an advisory capacity. So I'll come back to that. So hold on, and you in diaspora, hold on, because this is very interesting right now, and the topic, as far as I'm concerned, is relevant. Welcome back to Head to Head, and we, before we took the break, Bishnu was talking about, Mr. Tulsie was talking about certain things in dealing with tourism, and how we look at tourism. And and I mentioned the idea that here in the Act it says quite clearly to preserve a policy of preservation and to act in an advisory capacity. But the trust, it seems, are not being brought in to advise. And that's where, as far as I'm concerned, the professionalism in what goes on is lacking. I don't know how you think about that.
The trust is always engaged at the technical level with the various ministries. Whenever there's a workshop, there is policies being developed, etc. We are brought to bear. But we must understand that policy is a statement of intent. It is what you intend to do. At the end of the day, what matters is what you actually do. So whereas the trust gets consulted, let's say a policy is being developed for tourism, we'll get invited. Okay, and a document will be produced. The document will be the sum total of all the ideas. Some of ours may get in there or may not, and that's the process. But it is what you do afterwards to implement that policy. I mean, let me give you an example. We go, and I've heard at the highest level of our government, complaints about not enough funding to help us adapt to climate change.
Yes, yes.
But then you go, so that's a noble intent, and that is in the climate change policy, and we are engaged in developing it. But then you go and put forward a project to destroy the biggest mangrove, which is an integral part of your adaptation formula. Then the international community say, but you're not serious. You want money to deal with adapting to climate change, and you want to go and destroy a mangrove? You're not serious about adaptation. So the point is that you get engaged and involved at the time and place where things are being written. But when things are happening, you get excluded. And that's a challenge. I just mentioned the mangrove. I recall that it was in January of 2016, Dr. Anthony was Prime Minister. There was a presentation in the cabinet room by Theo Akim on the DSH project.
Really?
And the trust was at the table. After the presentation, the Prime Minister turned to Mr. Akim and told him, you need to talk with the National Trust because you are touching on areas that are sensitive and they need to be brought on board. Since then, we tried to reach out, elections came, things changed, and the door was closed. That discussion never took place. It is when you get the opportunity to advise at that level that it begins to matter. Not at the level where you're writing statements of intent, but where you're defining the actions you can undertake.
I gather that because you know, you were talking about the mangroves, and and it says that the Collins English Dictionary 2000 defines mangroves as tropical trees with exposed roots which grows beside water. They are also described as salt-tolerant plants and therefore the only trees equipped to live in salt water, red and white, about greenhouses and things of that sort, mangroves. And they have the ability to keep out much of the salt from the water entering the roots. Now, a lot of people have not understood much about mangroves, but mangroves itself, the preservation of them are very important. St. Lucia had 4 different types of mangroves. The one that we used a lot was the black mangroves for cold and things of that sort. But we didn't realize the importance of it.
Yeah, they serve so many functions.
Exactly.
Nursery for fish,
Yes.
you know. Lots of St. Lucians in the south, go to the mangroves to get crabs, that thing. They serve as a natural filter.
Yes, correct.
Keeping waste out of the marine environment. Because of the nature of the roots, they are very effective in breaking the force of storm surges.
Exactly.
And that's coastal protection.
Yes.
The other thing they do is that, mangroves get flooded from the sea,
Right.
and that's salt water.
Yes, quite.
And then in the dry season, the water evaporates, so there's a high salt concentration in the mangrove. The rains come in the rainy season, and all of this fresh water will now rush into the sea and change the salinity of the near shore water. What the mangrove does is that as it flows through it, it dissolves some of the salt, so the water entering the sea is no longer fresh water,
Right.
but it's brackish water. And
Correct.
so the impact of changing the salinity of the marine environment is reduced. So mangroves serve all of these purposes, and they are worldwide. They are protected. Was it when there was that tsunami in Sri Lanka?
Yes,
I think it
yes,
was.
yes.
The Prime Minister said that if they had not cleared the mangroves,
Yes.
half of the people who died would have been saved.
Saved. But it is a fact.
Yeah.
Bishnu, we only have to see, even when we had our almost Force 5 hurricane, how Marigot, for example, was so well protected, especially the yachts. Why? Because of the mangroves. That is why. And a lot of people had not understood the importance. But people coming from overseas with their big yachts realize that's where we must go to protect our yachts.
Yeah,
and
it's
they
a
were
perfect
protected.
place, actually.
Exactly.
Yes, yeah.
And can you imagine destroying that to build? And this is where the National Trust comes in.
Should come in.
Or should come in, yes.
When we were on the board of the DCA, we had the opportunity to make those inputs, but that's no longer the case.
Exactly. But why? Why have they not? Because you just mentioned that with Prime Minister Kenny Anthony, when the DSH thing came about, he made it clear that the trust you had to talk to the trust.
Yeah.
Because they are the experts. They are the ones that are put there
And that's their
to
role.
monitor. That's their role.
Yeah.
So why now that we have to sort of manipulate things to keep the trust out?
It
Even the
is.
subvention.
I think it is because there is this wrong belief that an opinion that's different from yours is an opposition, and not necessarily a search for a solution. So anything that is said that is not consistent with what the policymakers want or what a developer wants is seen in a negative light, whereas it is in fact an opportunity to explore solutions to avoid issues, avoid problems. We're pursuing a policy of development by application, not invitation,
Yes,
like Senator Lewis was promoting.
Right,
and
right.
what I
right.
mean by development by application is that someone comes, looks around. Here is a good idea. Here I can make some money by doing A, B, and C. I go to the government. I would like to do A, B, and C. They say, go ahead. Without exploring what A, B, and C. First exploring who you are. What is it you're bringing to the table? Are you bringing anything to the country? How is it that what you will do will help the country and help the people? Because the developer is there, the investor is there to help himself. If we think otherwise, we're fooling ourselves. We're starting on the wrong foot. It is the duty of our government to say, okay, you will do this thing and you will have a return on your investment. Now let's see how that helps my people. And I think that we fail to pursue, the question may be asked, but we fail to pursue to the fullest. And that is why we become accommodating to the point where we sacrifice what's ours for someone else's benefit. I call that privatization of profits and socializing costs, where the profits go to the investor and the cost to achieve that profit is borne by society. Whether it's through the loss of income, loss of employment opportunities, or loss of your natural assets. But somehow society bears that cost.
But do you think the antagonism that I see now, because that's what I can only call it antagonism, that those in power feel, is that they wanted by the hook or by the crooks to bring in a dolphin park, and it was something that not just the executive of the National Trust, but the whole of the National Trust, the whole membership, and plus so many other people from the outside came in and said, no way. And consequently, maybe those in power thought it was the trust that manipulated that, don't you think? Because we saw the stoppage of the subvention, all these sorts of things.
I believe that the subvention is directly tied to the dolphin.
Yes, indeed.
That's what I believe.
I believe so too.
And you're right, it's not just the trust. I mean, the way the trust is organized and the Act says so.
Yes.
The highest decision-making body in the trust are the members.
Correct.
And they took a decision. In fact, they passed a resolution at our meeting.
I was there.
Okay, and so we are mandated as the staff and the council to pursue that. It's not just our members. I mean, I know that we have a copy of a letter that was signed by 37 international organizations and sent to the Prime Minister. That was spearheaded by the International Organization of National Trust, of which we are a member.
Yes, quite.
But I don't know if I can do this on your show. But I heard a recent interview that the Prime Minister was giving, and the dolphin matter came up. In it, he said that the government wrote to the trust asking what our objections are, and we are still to respond. Well, that's not true. We responded. We responded with a detailed explanation of why we are objecting to this. There were environmental reasons, there were social reasons, and there were economic reasons and historic reasons. The letter was never acknowledged. So what we did, and we suspected that the Prime Minister will say that we never responded to his letter. So we sent a copy to every parliamentarian
Wow.
So that letter is now in the hands of every member of parliament. And so the Prime Minister's statement that we never responded is just not true. And it's unfortunate that he would say something like that on television in an interview, which is just not true.
Bishnu, I was at the meeting, and I must say to you that it is not the executive that made much of the decision that was taken, and you all as the executive was forced to go with the membership. And as I said, there were people there that were not even part and parcel of the National Trust. They came. And the meeting, from what I saw, gave you the incentives as the executive as what to do.
It's more of a
never heard
directive.
people. Yes, I've
It's a
never heard people being so demonstrative in, against something. It was there. It was all for all to see.
Yeah. And what was unfortunate is that at the highest level, that passion that our membership
Yes.
had was dismissed. Was dismissed. It was just brushed aside. I don't know. I think when one aspires for political leadership, you must understand that a politician receives a mandate from the people. A vote is a vote of trust that you will act in my interest. And if people are so passionate about something, why turn away from it?
Exactly.
I don't understand it.
And Bishnu, what I find too is in that sort of position, the first thing you have to do if you say you're a good leader is to engage people. Engage the trust, engage everybody that, it may, whatever decision you're going to take, going to affect them.
Yeah.
Hear and listen to what they have to say. And when you do that, you can then sit back and take these things into consideration and come up with another a proposal that would fit and
Exactly.
benefit the whole.
Yeah, and I think for one to become a great leader, one has to be able to defend the right of someone who disagrees with you, to voice that disagreement. And for you as the leader to take your views, your thoughts, and the different thoughts, and come up with a solution that is in between. There is no formula for this, but it has to be a willingness to internalize that people can have different opinions, but have the same objective.
Good. We are going to take the second break and come into the third break, but I want to go certainly a little bit more into the National Trust Act with Bishnu, because it is very important that not only me or he and his executive know about it, but it is a form of educating people to what the trust is all about and what our those who thought of it, like our esteemed Prime Minister, deceased now, Sir John Compton, and others, the Speaker of the House at the time was very, very prominent in putting the Trust Act together, and there were many others. So many to mention. I can't even tell you. So we're going to come back, and then we're going to come back to that part of the act that is so important to me, and I'd like Mr. Tulsie to explain that to me. Welcome back to Head to Head, and I was speaking about the many people, and one of the people, the ex-Speaker of the House, Mr. Daniels,
Sinclair.
Yes, Sinclair, and he was a passionate individual as far as the trust was concerned, and with him and Sir John Compton, so you really had two people that today you could say with the National Trust they were the founding fathers, so to speak.
Sir Julian was part
Sir
of that.
Julian also, yes, quite a few of them.
Yeah.
There's a list of them, but there are so many, and you sit back and you say, we must be thankful to these people, because they had
The vision.
the vision. The vision was so important at the time. Bishnu, here's something here that I saw, and it's long-winded, but it says, Under number 10, it says certain property of the trust to be alienable whenever after the passing of this act, immovable property, including buildings or submarine or subterranean areas, shall become vested in the trust. The council may, by resolution, determine that such property for submarine and subterranean area or such portions thereof as may be specified in such resolution are proper to be held for the benefit of the state, and such property or buildings or submarine or subterranean areas shall therefore be so held by the trust and shall be inalienable.
Yeah, the idea of it being inalienable is that there should not be a situation where it is acquired by the state or sold to an individual, but they should belong to the state in perpetuity.
Perpetuity.
So it can, so that was the intent there. The fathers of the trust understood that some places need to be kept forever for public use, for enjoyment by the state, and by the state we mean not just the machinery of government, but the people as well. And Pigeon Island is one of those places that they felt, should never be acquired and developed commercially. That is, that concept is also counter to the pressure being placed on the trust to convert its properties into revenue earning and revenue generating entities. The trust is about conservation, protection, preservation. We do things to raise funds, and that again is under pressure. Some are saying we are charging to go to use the beach, which is downright foolish.
No, but in the Act it said that. It says that to block things off so that people have to pay, and when they get in there are very strict rules. That's within the Act.
Yeah, Section 4 of the Pigeon Island bylaws stated
yes.
very clearly. That,
very clear, you know.
Yeah. Yes, so the whole idea is that there are elements of our heritage that needs to be protected, preserved, conserved. There are other areas of our heritage that we could put to sustainable use. And by sustainable use, we mean use it to generate income, use it for public enjoyment, but do it in a way that you can also generate income. And that's what we do with some of our properties.
Correct.
But we have to be careful when we do that. Let's take Maria Islands, for example. During the DSH saga, people were complaining that why is it there? We can't go to see it. But the government has a law, the Wildlife Protection Act.
Correct.
And although Maria Island is owned by the trust, it is governed by the Wildlife Protection Act, which is administered by the Ministry of Agriculture.
Correct.
And you have on Maria Island species that are found nowhere else in the world, including mainland St. Lucia.
I know.
Yeah. And it is for these reasons that working with government agencies, we have developed a protocol on visits to Maria Island. The numbers and the frequency are all controlled by law and by protocol. And if we exceed those, then we will put those species in danger. Bird Island in Antigua makes a lot of money, but there is no effort on conservation. Maria Island is special. It's not like Bird Island in Antigua. Maria Island is a wildlife reserve.
Correct.
And has to be seen like that. That's why visitation is limited, so that the species can survive. We are taking some steps to address that. We have introduced the whip-tailed lizard to some other offshore islands.
Very rare, yes.
Yeah, including Rat Island.
Right.
And we are working with some international partners to build what we call a mainland island. We have a property in Canaries that's about 140 acres. We're going to build a fence around it.
Good.
A fence designed to keep what is inside in and what is outside out.
Out. Correct.
And we will introduce threatened and endangered species so that they will survive in a forest, in an area that is designed to keep predators out. And it will become a research place. It will become a place children could visit, tourists could visit. We will do this in a way that will engage the community and will be financially sustainable.
Mm-hmm.
So all of these are major steps we are taking. And once we do that, then we can further ensure the survival of these species while making them more easily accessible to people.
But you see, I go back to, and I bring back Sir John. If Sir John did not have the vision, especially when we talk about our parrot, one of the rare parrots in the world, we would find that particular parrot of ours completely decimated. And St. Lucia would not have been known for one of the, rarest parrots in the world, because they were dying out. People were taking them away and things that sort. And Sir John decided enough was enough. And today they are...
back. Yes. I understand there was some initiative in this 80s, was it, or
Yes.
70s or 80s, working with I think it was Durrell Wildlife.
Yes, I was in England when all these things were going, and I was very impressed, and I couldn't believe it. And today, when I take pictures, I go to the Saltobus rainforest, and at about 4 or 5 o'clock to see our St. Lucian parrot flying across to go and get their food and thing, it's marvelous. Whereas during that period, this thing was forgotten.
Yeah, and one has to look at that activity in its context. It was not a time when the biodiversity convention was not even around,
Correct.
Yet, and so species conservation was not on the front burner, as it were.
Correct.
Yet, the St. Lucia government, I believe we must say kudos to Gabriel Charles
Yes.
for his involvement and the forestry department of the day in that process. There was the vision that there is this species that is so important to St. Lucia that it must be protected. And I think that we need to recognize that as visionary.
But of course
it was visionary.
But of course it was. And even then I was in Europe at the time, but people were speaking about it. This rare parrot, they had never seen a parrot like that, and consequently I thought at the time, why couldn't other people see it? But you're quite right. In those days, even in Europe, the idea of conservation, the idea of the being green was just coming to the fore.
Yeah, the first global conference was in 1972, and it took 20 years for the next one to happen in 1992.
Correct.
And that's when the whole sustainable development agenda really got going in '92. So the whole effort with the part predates the 1992 convention, 1972,
Yes,
I think.
Yes, indeed.
But yeah.
And then the things then began to explode with global warming and climate change, and then consequently we in the Caribbean, to an extent, when I came even for a trip in 1997, people didn't seem to understand that, whereas I was wholly involved in that in Europe, because you could see the problems that were occurring even in Africa, but people couldn't understand why, this fossil fuel, burning of fossil fuel. And you remember that's when Europe then began to get rid of coal fire, or coal for industries and things. But this is what St. Lucia is or the National Trust, when you think about it, these were apart from the prehistoric buildings, archaeological sites and things that sort, these were the things that had to be preserved.
Yeah.
And they hadn't understood that here.
Yeah, but I mean, we sort of got sidetracked. You're
Yes.
right, but the whole question of properties being
Right.
inalienable.
Yes.
I think we don't. I don't want us to lose that point. That the intention is that there are certain aspects of St. Lucian landscape or history that should not be developed, and I could think, for example, the two pitons.
Yes.
Yeah, certainly there are peaks.
Yes.
Nothing should happen there. These should always be protected. You don't want to put a lighthouse, a building in those places. I think Pigeon Island falls in that category.
Correct.
I think there are certain elements of history around Castries that needs to
be
be
preserved.
preserved that way.
Yeah.
The Meadows Battery is a good example.
Right.
I think that the Apostles Battery up on the Morn.
Yes.
These are elements that should not be developed. They should be kept there for public ownership and public enjoyment, and that's the idea of that part of the St. Lucia National Trust.
But you could see yourself what I hate to say that what Antigua did with this.
Yeah.
They preserved it, and they made it now. Grenada's done that. Why can't we think in that manner? Why must we destroy? To do what?
Yeah, I think Antigua has done a good job with English Harbor and those places.
Yes, tremendous.
Bermuda has done a lot of work as well
don't
in
talk to that,
preserving.
yes.
Yeah. I think that prior to the National Trust and Sir John's intervention,
Yes.
a lot of historical assets were not, the value was not recognized before him, and a lot of it got sold and
Yes.
transferred to private ownership.
Yeah.
And that was the mistake, and I understand that this happened in the 60s and
Yes.
70s or even before. That was the mistake that was made, and I think that's when, believe that when he realized what was happening,
Right.
the trust came into existence.
Well, Bishnu, time is coming, but I just hope that when we talk about Cabot and the beaches, that we're not only talking about those beaches, we're talking about all our beaches. It is for the people. It is people's beach. And I go back to this thing, I don't believe in the word crown lands. I believe in the land of the people. That's what I think.
Well, yeah, I mean, I've been hearing that discussion about Krung lands and the relevance of Krung in the name.
Yes.
I don't know. I think maybe they should be called heritage lands.
Exactly, exactly.
Because that's what they are.
They
They
are.
are part of the heritage, our heritage, and the heritage of those to come.
Yes.
That is
Those before.
Yeah.
Those before,
Yeah.
we now, and those to come, which are our children and their children.
Absolutely.
That's what it should be
Yeah.
all about. And for enjoyment, relaxation, it is ours, so to speak. And we have to preserve it, because that's what the National Trust Act is about. And that's the job that you are there for.
Yeah, and unlike the attempt of developers, if they have access to the beach, to keep locals out. What we do, what St. Lucians do, is this is our space, and we are willing to share it with the visitor.
Correct.
You know,
but
it's
why can't we discuss that? Why there must be this antagonism? The discussion can take
because
place.
it's a thought that I suppose runs counter to the views of others.
It's not only that, but I hate to tell you that, it's power. It's all about power. It's what we say, not what the locals say.
Yeah.
It's we invest, but this is not investment, because it's our investment that's there. I say this in all sincerity. And
It is national assets.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And we have to preserve it.
Yeah.
And thanks, Bishnu, once again, I must say to you, thanks very much. We could go on this thing forever, you know what I mean? Because as I said, I was reading till 2 o'clock in the morning because I needed to understand the Act better, because sometimes we just read it and we don't focus on the importance of the act. And the act was well put together.
Yeah.
I think it was only about 36 pages, but it was well put together, and it's relevant, and not only relevant then, I think it is even more relevant in years to come, because St. Lucia will be protected.
Yeah, and if anyone takes the time to read the Act, don't look at only why we exist, what we do, but look at how the Act defines how we must do what we do, how we are governed, and what things we are allowed to do and not allowed to do. Because it has to be looked at in the whole. And if anyone reads it, to pay attention to the governance structure. It's interesting. It's so different from any other entity created by law, because it is the members who are in control.
Vishnu, thanks so much to having you, and I hope that St. Lucia, those in the diaspora, and further afield, will see why the National Trust is very important, one of the most important assets, I call it an asset now, of St. Lucia. We need it. We need the trust more than ever for our children and their children. They are the ones who will preserve it for them. Thank you very much, Bishnu.
You're most welcome.